What if I told you that in ancient China, sex wasn't just about having babies or feeling good? It was actually connected to staying healthy, living longer, and even becoming immortal. Ancient Chinese people had some of the strangest ideas about sex that you've ever heard, and they took these ideas so seriously that emperors and doctors wrote entire books about them. But here's what will shock you. These weren't just weird personal beliefs that a few strange people had. These sexual practices were part of official medicine, government policy, and religious teachings that shaped how millions of people lived for thousands of years. Some of these ideas were so bizarre that they make modern dating apps look completely normal. I've spent months studying ancient Chinese medical texts, historical records from imperial courts, and archaeological evidence about how people actually lived in ancient China. What I discovered is a world where sex was treated like a science, a medicine, and a pathway to magical powers all at the same time. In this video, I'm going to reveal the most bizarre sexual practices from ancient China, from emperors who thought having sex with hundreds of women would make them live forever, to medical treatments that used sex as medicine for diseases. Plus, I'll show you how these ancient beliefs influenced Chinese culture for centuries and why some people still believe in these ideas today. The philosophy behind the madness. Before we dive into the weird stuff, you need to understand that ancient Chinese people didn't think about sex the same way we do today. To them, sex was connected to a whole system of beliefs about energy, health, and the universe itself. Ancient Chinese philosophers believed that everything in the universe was made up of two types of energy, yin and yang. Yin was female energy, cool, dark, and mysterious. Yang was male energy, hot, bright, and active. They thought that when men and women had sex, they were actually trading these energies back and forth. This wasn't just a romantic idea. Ancient Chinese doctors wrote detailed instruction books called Fangzhongshu, which means arts of the bedroom. These books were like medical textbooks that taught people exactly how to have sex in ways that would make them healthier and live longer. The most important rule in these books was that men should never waste their jing, their life force that came out during sex. Ancient Chinese people believed that every time a man had an orgasm, he was literally shortening his life by giving away his most precious energy. But this energy-stealing idea led to some of the most bizarre sexual practices in human history, especially among the most powerful men in China. The emperor's energy theft scheme. Chinese emperors took this energy-stealing idea to absolutely crazy extremes. They didn't just want to live longer, they wanted to become immortal. And they thought the way to do this was by having sex with as many young women as possible, without ever having orgasms themselves. Here's how their twisted logic worked. Young women were full of fresh yin energy. If an emperor could have sex with hundreds of these women and absorb their energy without losing any of his own yang energy, he would become incredibly powerful and live forever. Some emperors had harems with over 3,000 women. The Han Dynasty Emperor Wu had so many concubines that he needed a special system just to keep track of them all. Officials would use jade tablets to mark which women the emperor had been with and when it was each woman's turn. Emperor Yang of the Sui dynasty was so obsessed with this energy-stealing sex that he built a special palace just for it. The palace had rooms designed for different types of energy exchange, with mirrors, special beds, and even mechanical devices to help him have sex with multiple women in one night. But the emperors had to follow strict rules. They could never have orgasms with older women because that would waste their precious yang energy. They could only finish with young women under 30, and even then, only at certain times of the month when the energy exchange would be most beneficial. But emperors weren't the only ones who believed sex could be used as medicine. Ancient Chinese doctors had their own bizarre ideas about using sex to cure diseases. Sex as medicine, the ultimate prescription. Ancient Chinese doctors didn't just prescribe herbs and acupuncture for sick people. They also prescribed specific types of sex, performed at exact times in particular positions as medical treatment for diseases. For example, if someone had a headache, doctors might prescribe having sex in a specific position during the full moon with a partner who had strong yang energy. If someone had stomach problems, They might need to have sex while facing east during sunrise to absorb the sun's healing energy. But the most bizarre medical sex practice was called seasonal sexual therapy. Doctors believed that having sex during the wrong season could actually make you sick or even kill you. They created complicated calendars that told people exactly when it was safe to have sex and when it was dangerous. These medical sex prescriptions were taken so seriously that some doctors specialized only in sexual medicine. They would examine patients' energy levels, check their pulse, and then write detailed sexual prescriptions, like they were prescribing pills. But medical sex prescriptions were just one part of a much larger system of sexual rules and rituals that controlled every aspect of people's intimate lives. The instruction manual madness. Ancient Chinese people didn't just make up sexual rules randomly. They wrote incredibly detailed instruction books that taught people exactly how to have sex for maximum energy exchange, health benefits, and spiritual enlightenment. The most famous of these books was called Sunu Jing, or the Plain Girl's Classic. This book was supposedly written by a goddess who came down from heaven to teach the Yellow Emperor the secrets of sexual immortality. It contained hundreds of different sexual positions, breathing techniques, and energy-focusing methods. These instruction books were incredibly detailed. Some contained over 30 different sexual positions, each with specific names like dragon turns over, phoenix spreads wings, and monkey climbs tree. Each position was supposed to create different types of energy flow and cure different health problems. Some techniques were so complicated they required months of practice before you could even attempt them. People had to learn to control their breathing, their muscle tension, their mental focus, and their energy flow all at the same time during sex. Some wealthy families would hire special teachers to train their sons and daughters in these sexual techniques before they got married. It was like going to school to learn how to have sex, except the classes could last for years, and the final exam was your wedding night. But these instruction books led to even stranger practices when people started combining sex with religion and magic. Cosmic sex rituals. When religion gets weird. Some ancient Chinese religious groups took the idea of sexual energy exchange so far that they created group sex rituals that were supposed to connect them with the gods and the universe itself. These religious groups believed that when many people had sex together at the same time, they could create a massive energy field that would open doorways to heaven and allow them to communicate with divine beings. Some rituals involved dozens of people having sex in carefully arranged patterns that were supposed to mirror the positions of stars in the sky. Other rituals required people to have sex while chanting specific prayers, or while looking at sacred symbols painted on the walls. Archaeological discoveries have found special buildings that were designed specifically for these sexual rituals. These buildings had altars, special beds arranged in geometric patterns, and walls covered with sexual and religious artwork. The final goal of these cosmic sex rituals was to achieve something called great unity, a state where all the participants would merge their energies together and become one with the universe. Some groups believed this would allow them to live forever or gain magical powers. The dark side of ancient sexual beliefs. While some of these ancient sexual practices might sound interesting or even fun, there was a very dark side to these beliefs that caused real harm to real people, especially women. Many emperors became so obsessed with sexual energy absorption that they literally exhausted themselves to death. Emperor Xuanzong of the Tang dynasty reportedly died from having too much sex while trying to achieve immortality through energy stealing. Women in harems and concubine systems had no control over their own bodies or lives. They were treated like objects that existed only to provide sexual energy to men. Many of these women lived their entire lives as prisoners in palaces, never allowed to leave or make their own choices. Some religious leaders used these cosmic sex ritual beliefs to manipulate and abuse their followers. They would claim that having sex with them was necessary for spiritual advancement, when really they were just taking advantage of people's religious beliefs. People who followed extreme sexual energy practices sometimes seriously damaged their health. Some men who tried never to have orgasms developed painful medical conditions. Some women who participated in energy-draining rituals became severely malnourished and weak. The bizarre tools and accessories. Ancient Chinese people didn't just have strange sexual ideas. They also created weird tools, accessories, and objects that were supposed to enhance sexual energy exchange and improve performance. Some people wore special jade jewelry during sex because they believed jade could store and amplify sexual energy. Others used mirrors positioned around their beds to reflect and multiply the energy created during sex. Ancient Chinese pharmacies sold special herbs and potions that were supposed to increase sexual energy, improve performance, or help people absorb more energy from their partners. Some of these preparations were actually dangerous and could make people sick. Religious sexual rituals often involved special candles, incense, and ceremonial objects that were supposed to attract divine energy and make the sexual energy exchange more powerful. What modern science says. Now that we know what ancient Chinese people believed about sex and energy, let's talk about what modern science actually tells us about these practices. Modern science has found no evidence that people can steal life energy from each other through sex. The idea that men lose life force through orgasms, or that women can drain energy from men, has no scientific basis whatsoever. In fact, modern research shows that regular, healthy sexual activity is actually good for both men and women. It can reduce stress, improve immune function, and contribute to overall physical and mental health. Modern psychology has found that healthy sexual relationships are based on mutual respect, communication, and consent, the opposite of the energy-stealing, exploitative practices that were common in ancient China. However, some of the breathing and mindfulness techniques from ancient sexual practices do have real benefits. Modern research shows that controlled breathing and mindfulness can reduce anxiety and improve sexual satisfaction. Lessons from history. These bizarre ancient Chinese sexual practices teach us important lessons about how cultural beliefs can shape people's most intimate behaviors, sometimes in harmful ways. Many of these practices were really about powerful men controlling women and justifying their exploitation through religious and medical beliefs. The idea that emperors needed hundreds of concubines for their health was just an excuse for sexual abuse. These historical examples show us how dangerous it can be when people believe that sex has magical or supernatural powers. When sex becomes about gaining power or immortality instead of human connection, it often leads to exploitation and harm. Comparing these ancient beliefs to modern knowledge shows us how much we've learned about healthy sexuality, consent, and human relationships. We now understand that good sexual relationships are based on equality, respect, and mutual care. The end of an era. These bizarre sexual practices didn't last forever. As China modernized and came into contact with other cultures, many of these extreme beliefs gradually disappeared or were modified into less harmful forms. When new dynasties came to power, they sometimes banned the most extreme sexual practices, especially the costly imperial harems that drained government resources. Some emperors realized that having thousands of concubines was actually weakening the empire rather than strengthening it. As Chinese society changed, people began to question whether these ancient sexual beliefs really worked. When emperors who followed these practices still got sick and died young, people started to doubt the effectiveness of sexual energy stealing. What we can learn today. While we can laugh at some of these bizarre ancient practices, they actually teach us important lessons about sexuality, power, and human relationships that are still relevant today. The most important lesson is that healthy sexuality must be based on consent and mutual respect. The ancient practices that treated women as energy sources to be drained were harmful because they ignored women's autonomy and well-being. These historical examples show us why it's important to base our understanding of sexuality on scientific evidence rather than superstition or cultural myths that might sound appealing but have no factual basis. Understanding these historical practices helps us recognize how cultural beliefs about sexuality can vary dramatically across time and place, and reminds us to be thoughtful about our own cultural assumptions. Conclusion: the strange world of ancient beliefs. The bizarre sexual practices of ancient China show us just how different human cultures can be, and how powerful beliefs can shape even the most intimate aspects of people's lives. While these ancient practices might seem funny or shocking to us today, they were deadly serious to the people who practiced them. Emperors spent fortunes, doctors wrote detailed manuals, and ordinary people organized their entire sex lives around these beliefs. The most important thing we can learn from these historical examples is that healthy sexuality should be based on mutual respect, scientific understanding, and genuine care for each other's well-being, not on superstitions about stealing energy or achieving immortality. Every time we make decisions about sexuality based on evidence rather than superstition, or treat our partners with respect rather than as objects to be used, we're showing that we've learned from the mistakes of the past. Speaking of bizarre ancient practices that shaped entire civilizations, what I've just shown you about sexual beliefs is nothing compared to the strange medical treatments that ancient Chinese doctors used to try to cure diseases and extend life. There's one particular medical practice that was so weird and dangerous, it killed more people than it saved. But this knowledge is disappearing as ancient medical texts crumble. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss most shocking medical practices from ancient China that will make you grateful for modern hospitals. And I'll see you in the next one.